Everyone, Anthony here, creator behind Legions of Will, and I wanted to go over the cards and the deck list in the Biterrian theme deck. So Biterrians are unique to the Legions of Will world. They are this humanoid species. They have these like tentacle things on the back. They're very much like a warrior species. They're not very aggressive, but they live in a world where, you know, there's a lot of like synergy with their lifestyle and with their, it's not quite an aggro deck. It's very easy to play, and it's just, a lot of synergy. So in Legions of Will, you have bases. So the Biterrians, we have an Elder Triaka, a Triaka, and Triaka Forest bases. Only one of each. So on the front of the card, you see the defense, capacity, and resource, and then on the back of the card is the activation cost. So this is how much it costs to flip the card over. So you would start with one of these face up, and then you would gain your resource, this one being 3, and then eventually flip over your other bases and expand. So all in all, the Elder Triaka is one of the best bases in the game, and that happens to be in the Biterrian theme deck. Triaka is also another one of the best bases in the game. They're very similar. Elder Triaka produces a lot of resource. At the beginning of your turn, it only costs 5 to flip, whereas Triaka has a decent amount of defense, so it's good to start with your opening base. It does cost 6 to flip, so you know it all depends on what your strategy is. Triaka Forest decreases the cost to play Biterrians for you by 1. So as long as the space is active, any Biterrian you play is going to cost 1 less, which is great because in general, the Biterrians have a pretty high resource cost. So with the upgrades, we have Field of Flowers, one of the best vanilla upgrades. It produces 4 defense, and it also nets you resource and capacity. It only costs 4. You can, ideally, your best turn with this deck is going to be Elder Triaka as your starting base. Gain that 4 resource, add Field of Flowers. Now you've increased your base's defense to 7. So now you have a 7 defense, 4 capacity, and 4 resource producing base. So that is your ideal turn 1. Then you can go into things like Triaka Pod, where your base is going to deal damage to units when they deal damage to the base. So it turns it into a living base. And the Triaka Pod is a legendary, so it is one of the more rare bases in the deck. Resourceful Meditation, which was an uncommon for the samples, but it just turns out that this card is just really good. It gets you capacity, so it nets you 2 capacity and pays for itself. On top of that, at the beginning of your turn, you gain 2 resource for each unit stationed in this base that did not attack during your last turn. The Biterrians, like I said, are peaceful unless provoked. So especially if you have Biterrian Owl and Triaka Frog, then Resourceful Meditation is going to gain you so much resource. 2 for each unit stationed in this base that did not attack. So that's, if you have 2 frogs and an owl, you're gaining 6 resource at the beginning of your turn. It's just a really good card. Only costs 4. All 3 of these upgrades just cost 4 to play. So you also have, in addition to your base and upgrade card types, we have traps. Traps are played face down for 2. Those are attached to a specific base. You can pay the activation cost. In this case, it's 0, and then the effect will trigger. So in this case, we'll pay 2, play this face down, attach it to a base. Pay 0, flip it over, and then we'll destroy an attacking unit with power 4 or less. And when we're playing multiplayer games, because this game is a lot of fun to play, with multiple people, you could do 2v2 or you could do 4-person. Until your next turn, units your opponents control gain +2 will. So if you activate this on the player's turn after yours, then you still have 2 more players, and if that player happens to take an extra turn, you have multiple turns where it'll cost 2 more will to attack you in general. Track a Frog Patch. Again, all traps cost 2 to play face down. And then there's an activation cost. This one is also 0, and you get to pay 2 any number of times to prevent that many units from dealing damage this turn. So we have 2 copies of Something in the Water, and we have 3 copies of Triaka Frog Patch in this deck. Moving on to the actions. We have some actions here. You could tell it's an action because of the card type, and then it has Redeem, which means we can pay the resource costs. In this case, it's 1, discard it, and then in turn draw another card. Retreat is return a unit you control to its owner's hand. It's really good to be played defensively. We want to stay out of danger. Maybe a base is getting destroyed and we want to protect one of our big guys and play it next turn without completely losing it and having it sent to the graveyard. This is an excellent card for that. At the very least, you pay 1 and you draw a card. Biterrian Haunting, it's a 2 resource and it also has Redeem. This is another card that's very versatile. I've been seeing it played in control style decks because you get to choose one. Biterrians gain -3 will until end of turn, or non-Biterrians gain +3 will until end of turn. So it's really good to play even if you're not playing Biterrians. It's obviously more versatile in a Biterrian deck. Moving on, we have Fur's Rage. Pay 1, this also has Redeem. And then, so you have to pay 1 for the card, and then the effect triggers, and you get to pay X, which would be any amount of resource. Deal that much damage divided among any number of units. This deck has potential to gain lots of resource, and you can spend it on, Triaka Frog Patch, and you could spend it on Fur's Rage. And yeah, say you have 10 resource you want to dump into this, plus your 1, so 11 total. You can deal 2 to one unit, 3 to another unit, and 5 to another unit. So that's 3 units that are being dealt a ton of damage. In Legions, damage also, since the power is also representative of the unit's health, damage dealt does decrease the power of that unit until end of turn. So, for example, this one right here has 4 power. If we deal 3 damage to it, only 1 damage is going to be dealt by the Elder Biterrian. It weakens and also destroys. Free Will is a really fun card to play around with. Target unit's will becomes 0 until end of turn. So we literally get to attack for free. It also has Redeem and it costs 3. Excellent card, very versatile in other decks. We have 2 copies of Retreat, 2 copies of Biterrian Haunting, 2 copies of Fur's Rage, 2 copies of Free Will, and then we have our last action here, Biterrian Flower. 3 copies of this rare action card. It does not have Redeem. It is very versatile, and it costs 1. We get to choose one or both. We can give a unit +2 power, or we can give a unit -2 power. So 3 copies of this card. Very good card. One of the most powerful actions in general. All right, so moving on to units. We have Biterrian Owl, which is a creature. All right, so things that target Biterrians would not affect this card. It costs 2, and when you play it, Biterrians you control gain -2 will until end of turn. So it's kind of like Biterrian Haunting, a little less versatile, but it is a creature that we can play. It has 4 will and 2 power, and it's one of these cards that we can have sit inside of our base, hold things down, and use as a chump blocker, and also gain resource off of Resourceful Meditation. Next up is Biterrian Soldier, and it potentially has 5 will. So Biterrian Soldier gains -2 will until end of turn, as long as 1 or more other units are attacking. Triaka Frog is another creature. It's not a Biterrian. It costs 2. It's a 2/1. Very easy to attack, but also very easy to get destroyed. But you'll be surprised that since this costs 2, you can get it out early in the game, and people do actually play this card more offensively. It is used in some aggro decks. And when Triaka Frog is destroyed, you gain 1 resource. So you get that 1 resource back later on. So there's 4 copies of Biterrian Owl, 2 copies of Biterrian Soldier, and 4 copies of Triaka Frog. Next, we have Awakened Biterrian. This is one of the first Biterrians created. When Awakened Biterrian is destroyed, you gain 2 resource. Biterrian Warrior, one of the most powerful uncommons in general, not just in this deck. It's a Biterrian, and it can only be blocked by 2 or more units. Elder Biterrian costs 4. It has 6 will, so it has pretty high will, pretty low power at 4. But when you play it, you get to look at the top 6 cards in your deck and put them back in any order. That's a huge card advantage. He is the wise Biterrian, so you're getting to know the future. 6 cards deep. It's just great to prepare for what's ahead. So we have 3 copies of that, And we have 2 copies of Drod the Protector. Drod is an OG unit all the way from the concept phase of the game. Whenever Drod the Protector attacks alone, you may pay 4, and if you do, it can't be blocked. It costs 8. It has 6 will, which is average, 50-50 chance this card is going to attack statistically, and then you have 9 power. And then by paying 4, as long as it's the only one that's attacking, pay 4 and it can't be blocked. For the Untamed, costs 6, pretty high will, pretty low power. But whenever he's blocked, he gains +2 power for each blocking unit. So yeah, that is the Biterrian theme deck. You can play this on Tabletop Simulator right now. Everything's live. Hop in the Discord, download Tabletop Simulator on Steam. You can download the mod and you can play this deck exactly as it is. All right, so thanks for watching and peace.